Hello and welcome to the African Data Scientist Podcast, a podcast where we get to tell the story of the African AI and data science potential. I'm your host for this episode, Stephen Oladele. In this episode, we had a conversation with an African data scientist, Salomon Kabongo, an NLP researcher under the African Masters in Machine Intelligence Program, AMMI, which is part of the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences Program, AIMS, which provides an ecosystem of advancement of machine learning in the service of global society. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate 5-star wherever you're listening to your podcast on, share with your colleagues in social network. You can also consider listening to the podcast at a higher or lower speed than normal. The show notes contain other details. And without further ado, let's dive right into the episode. Hi, Salomon. Welcome to our show. How are you doing today?
Yeah, hi, Stephen. I'm good, and thank you for having me today. I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion.
Yeah, we're absolutely delighted to have you on the show today. Of course, you were recommended to us by Evangelist, and it's been amazing going through your work and what you're doing so far. And we would, of course, love to hear and learn a lot from you. Please introduce yourself to our listeners and, of course, what you're currently working on.
Great. So I'm Salomon Kabongo. I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Most people know it as DRC. I'm currently in Ghana, specifically in Accra, where I'm finishing my master degree at the African Master in Machine Intelligence, which is a program under the African Institute in Mathematical Science, AIMS. Currently, I'm basically working on my research project, and I'm working on live translation. I'm interested on how can we do automatic speech translation from English to Lingala, which is one of the most spoken language in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Pretty awesome. Just so listeners should know, Salomon is perhaps the third affiliate of AMIS that's been on the show of AIMS. That's been on the show. We had Evangelist Michael on the first episode. Listeners, you can go check that out, as well as Jeremiah Faduba, who is a teaching assistant at the AIMS and AMMI. And thank you so much, Salomon, for such introduction. What has your career journey been like, and how did that shape your decision to become a machine learning researcher?
Wow, thank you for the question. I think my journey was a little bit different and fun at the same time, because at first I did my undergrad back in DRC. I had to actually move from my local town to another town because I wanted to go in a big university, one of the biggest universities back there in the country, which is the University of Lubumbashi. Actually, Congo is a French-speaking country. Okay. So I had to move to leave my parents and come to that university to do computer science. That was my motive, because I liked programming and coding. So unfortunately, when I reached there were no computer science major in my university. So I was kind of confused, and the only option that was there, it was mathematics and computer science. So I was kind of obliged to go for that. So, and unfortunately, again, when I get into that, there were basically not much of computer science on it, so just pure mathematics. And I had to go with that. I did a lot of topology, functional analysis, differential equation, and stuff like that. And in my country, you need to do 5 years for you to get a bachelor degree. So I did 5 years, and after that, I had a lot of mathematical foundation, but with no practical, computer science skills. My coding skills were not that great at that time. So basically, I was in a very frustrating space, because I didn't know what is how can I assist my society? How can I be a solution to the problem that the country is facing and the problem that humanity is facing as a whole? So I was fortunately enough in 2018 to get the first scholarship by AIMS, the African Institute for Mathematical Science, to do my master degree in South Africa at the University of Western Cape. So that was my revelation, if I can say so, and I'm always grateful to AIMS for that. And it's during that master degree that I finally got introduced to machine learning and artificial intelligence, and that was mind-blowing, because I could now see my mathematical knowledge. How can I see the link between that mathematical knowledge and solving a practical problem? How can you recognize objects inside the video? How can you do translation from one language to another one? So all the notion of mathematics that I've been learning before, even though frustrated because I didn't know how to apply them, was now making much more sense to me. And that was one of the biggest experience that I had in my life. And I knew that machine learning was done for me, and it was a best fit for my career. And since then, I've been enjoying the journey so far.
It's really been a fascinating journey. I mean, who would have known that from such a prestigious university in the Congo DRC, and having to go to your master's and get introduced to AI and see where they matter, because of course mathematics is like the foundation of the working machine learning and artificial intelligence today. And Absolutely. It's been such an amazing journey. And I'm absolutely delighted you're here, Salomon. Thank you so much. So I'm sure some of our listeners would definitely love to know, how's life as an African researcher? Because I know you're currently a researcher and you spent more time in the academia than in the industry. So how is life as an African researcher? How can you describe that?
Thank you for that question. That's actually great to have. So, one of the great things with research first in general is it's exciting. You wake up in the morning, you don't know actually exactly what you are looking for, but you know that I'm kind of making steps towards something that I will achieve that will be beneficial for the humankind in general. So you are trying to kind of push the boundary of knowledge, trying to think on things that will affect the way we live our life today. For example, one of the things that are possible today, for example, people that move from one country recently, I don't know Ghana too much because I'm in Accra. I was somewhere in Accra. I didn't know the place, but I was confident that whatever I am, I can take a Uber back home because I know that I can't get lost. I'll just take a nap, get into a Uber, I put the destination of where I'm staying, I will get back home. Those things are possible because some researchers come up with an idea to think of how can they, build those applications and so on and so. So that's for research in general. But in African researchers, it's again more exciting because you are working on things that you may be the only one working on. Especially in the field of natural language processing, you realize that there is there's not a lot of researchers currently, doing research on a lot of natural language processing tasks. And you will realize that you are alone over there, and you know that the thing that you are working on, even though currently there is no one who is looking at it, maybe there is a lot of people that are interested in it, but in the future, that will be a reference for other people. The notebook that you're putting on your GitHub will be helpful to the other generation that will be basing on that to build emerging technology. So this is one of the things that excites me the most, working on stuff that I know for sure that people will be using it for improving the state of the art in NLP in Africa.
Salomon, I must say we are so lucky to have you in Africa, really, because I can sense the passion in your voice and the passion for impact, and it's so fascinating that we have a rare African researchers like you helping to, make the continent a better place through research in AI and generally research in science and other areas. Thank you so much, Salomon, and thank you so much to the amazing researchers, African researchers looking to make Africa a better place. Thank you once again. Now, Salomon, I'm moving back to your career generally and talking about more technical spaces like machine learning now, of course. In very accessible terms, what is natural language processing and why should it really matter to us as Africans?
Yeah, that's a good question and a difficult one. So, in a very simple terms, I would just like to a little bit get back to artificial intelligence first, to go quickly to the answer. So basically, when we do artificial intelligence, we're just trying to produce intelligence, artificially create systems that are able to have some kind of intelligence, some kind of reasoning. So, and natural language processing is a subset of that big field of artificial intelligence, where we try to focus on how can computer understand human languages, natural language. How can a computer understand your text? When, for example, you Google what is machine learning? How does computer understand that query to Google to give to you relevant result? Today, people can't live. Some of the people can't live without Google. So we are actually Googling everything. And all those things are possible because of natural language processing. So if I can just say it quickly, it's a way of allowing computer to deal with text as well as the audio as well for speech recognition. So that's what I can say. And secondly, the second question was, why should it matter us as African.
Yes.
It was fun recently. We were playing with on my iPad with a friend. We're trying, because I'm also interested in speech recognition. I was trying to Google my name through Siri. For those that are familiar with Siri, the technology where you speak and it kind of gives you answers. So I was trying to tell him Google Salomon Kabongo, which is my name, but it could not write my name properly because it's not able to write Kabongo, because Solomon is popular, but Kabongo is kind of an African name.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of examples like that. If we are not working as African to make our names, to make our culture, to make our value represented in digital form, it will be difficult for us in the future. Decision that will come for example, if you are applying for a job, if, for example, they are ranking researchers, they are ranking data scientists, if there are no African represented in that space, there will be bias that will be included in this kind of query and in this kind of search. So we should be represented in those areas to be able to bring our culture and our value in that space.
Wow, it's so profound. Yes, talking about natural language processing being a subset of artificial intelligence, perhaps, and why it should matter to us as Africans. I think it's one of the things we're going to talk about more in this conversation. The fact that we are really not represented when it comes to state of the art natural language processing improvements per se. But coming back to a more career related question. Why did you decide to work on NLP as opposed to other specializations in the field of machine learning, looking at fields like computer vision, and other areas? Why did you think the natural language processing was where you really wanted to do more research on?
Wow. Thank you for that question. I think this is really a personal question to me because I said earlier that I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo. For those that are aware, that is a French-speaking country. So I've done all my high school, undergrad, honor degree, everything. I've done it in French. So I didn't know anything of English during that time. So basically, when I decided to go, I wanted to do first a master's degree in Nairobi, Kenya. So thank to God, my parents was able to send me to Kenya to learn first English because I wanted to learn in an English-speaking country. So I spent some months in Kenya, Nairobi, a beautiful country, by the way, just to learn English and to be able to understand, the course that will be taught by professor at the University of Nairobi. And it was kind of not obvious because my parents has to assist me, to travel. I had to take some part job to be able to pay for my house rent and stuff like that. And that kind of drive my motivation to get into natural language processing and specifically machine translation, because I realized that there is a lot of huge amount of knowledge and resources that are available outside there for free. But one of the limitations for a lot of Africans is those resources are mostly in English or in Chinese or Japanese or whatever language that those resources are made in. So there are a limitation that people have those things for free, but they can't get access to it because they don't know those languages. So that really what motivated me to get interested to natural language processing, because I knew first that I needed to work on something that would do translation. And later on, when I talked to some, senior researchers, they told me that machine translation is part of natural language processing. And that is the way I found myself researching in natural language processing.
Oh wow! Like I'll iterate again, Salomon. It's just amazing to kind of sense the passion, even though we are not really seeing physically right now because this interview is conducted over a voice IP software. But I could sense the passion in your voice. And once again, I'm really delighted that you're an African researcher. Thank you so much once again, Salomon, for everything you're doing. Really. Now, I think you're the best person to ask this next question because as a researcher, as an NLP researcher for that matter, you are closer to what the progress is like and what the state of the technology is like in Africa. So it's just looking at the broader scheme of things, what's the state of natural language processing technology in Africa right now?
That's an excellent question. I think currently in Africa, to answer this question before I give my personal viewpoint is you can sense this in how represented are papers that address African language issue in African language in top NLP conference. For example, the MNLP conference, which is the empirical method in natural language processing conference, which is one of the top conferences in natural language processing. If you look at the percentage of accepted paper that address specifically issue in African languages, you see that it's not even more than 10%. I don't know even if it is more than 5%. Just to say that state of natural language processing in Africa is in a very early stage. So we have currently movements where I'm really excited every day to be part of this big movement, which is known as Masakane. Maybe I will talk more about it later on. But we are basically in that movement trying to construct the first baseline. Like I was excited to work on my mother tongues, which is Chiluba, to create a machine translation baseline that do English to Chiluba translation. When I share it with some of my friends back home, they're excited to see, wow, can this be possible? Can I just write something in English and see it in Chiluba? These things are made possible by a group of researchers around the continent. We have amazing researchers from all over Africa, from different universities, and we are working together to create the first baseline of African languages. We have Nigerian languages, we have Kenyan languages, almost all the African languages are represented within Masakane. So there are movements like that, the deep learning in Daba, we have also the Ghana NLP, we have movements like that that are starting up. They are very recent movement in less, I think there is no movement with more than 5 years. So we have just very recent movement that are starting up to try to address the issue, because we have realized that we need to tackle it now. We need to get started. And I'm really excited on what the future has for us. But it's going to be amazing, I can tell you for sure.
Oh, well, it's surely going to be amazing. I mean, with researchers like you working on making NLP workable technology in Africa and better in Africa and for Africans, it's definitely, the future is definitely in safe hands, let me put it that way. Now, what are the challenges surrounding the progress of NLP with African data? Because now you said you were talking about the percentage of submissions in one of the largest NLP conferences and how low it is. But what are the challenges surrounding the progress of NLP technology with African data, for African problems?
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful question. This is a deep question because you know that machine learning in general, we need data. So basically, you can't do any machine learning without data. So, and NLP as well need a huge amount of data. So one of the big issue and challenge with NLP is the lack of data for a lot of African languages. When I got started, for example, in machine translation, I had a course back then, the University of Western Cape in South Africa. I knew that, okay, for doing machine translation, I need some parallel corpuses in language A and another corpus in language B so that I can feed it into a model and, train a model. So I knew that, and I was excited to see, okay, this is easy. I did a sample on in class, a good project when we did it in English and French. Amazing. Let me now go and work in our language. I now went online to check if there are any corpus of data in Lingala or in Chiluba. You know what? I didn't get any. I keep searching. I say, okay, let me stop this way. Let me, for example, go to all the known journals, like local journals that publish every day, journals to give information to people in the country. I realized that those websites only publish papers, like they just publish on paper and they don't upload the digital format on the web. And that was a challenge. So basically, if you want those data, you need yourself to start scanning those papers, find a way to transform those images to text. And it is challenging because the way the things are working in the continent, in Africa, people are not much aware of making things digital for researchers to use later on. They just think that when I publish a paper, when I publish a news, it's just for people to read and that's all. No, they should be aware that those news are telling stories. Those data are not there to be just packed on a room as archive. The archive is not just for fun, so that when people come to your office, they can say that there is a room of archive. No, it has been made so that people can read that data to see what is the story in the data and how can we use it to predict the future and do machine learning on it. So that's one of the biggest challenge in the African continent is how are you going to get data to do machine learning? And I think this is what I can say with regard to the question.
Yes, of course. It's no news to practitioners and as well as researchers that data is generally a common problem for the progress of any machine learning technology at all, be it natural language processing or computer vision or all of those things. But talking about specific to Africa, yes, we have low resource data for languages and all of this. And you talked about Masanke and the community. I guess you'll be talking more about that as the conversation goes on. But just coming back to you in this case now, how long do you think it will take us to overcome these challenges? Especially you're talking about data, low resource data, for example. How long do you think it will take us to overcome this particular challenge and have a working NLP technology for Africa?
So I think this it's difficult for me to give the exact, but I will try to estimate how long I think, and my own opinion, it will take us to at least get some working NLP technology, because we should know for sure that even for higher resources language as English, there's still a lot of work to do. NLP is not a solved problem. There are papers every day. We're trying to push the boundary, push the state of the art to do better than what we have already. So I think that as the state of NLP in Africa, if we decide to start investing, believing, and supporting researchers across the continent now, I think that in less than 10 years, someone can say that 10 years is too much, but I think that in less than 10 years, if we start working, because building data is not just putting data together, but there should be a cross interaction between linguists, data scientists, researchers working together to make sure that they are not bringing much biasness in the data. So that there should be a cross-discipline works to be able to produce relevant data set and do a lot of research to be able to push and to get started and to increase the state of NLP technology in Africa. I think, at my own viewpoint, in less than 10 years, we can reach that level of having, you will not hear anyone in Africa saying that my language is low resources. If we can all together start working on it now, not more now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Salomon, for such insight. 10 years might seem like a long time, but trust me, technology is somewhat a magical thing, because sometimes you might think it's 10 years and, because of the exponential progress, it's back like 2, 3, 4 years and everything's done. But I completely agree with you, Salomon. Like, just giving us the 10 years timeline, we should be able to have African languages equally represented in large corpus of data and have a working NLP technology. Now, I think we've stressed a lot about Africa being historically underrepresented, and talking about global advances. You talked about Siri not being able to recognize your African name. And because we are historically underrepresented here in Africa, are there steps being taken to solve the challenges of biases in text data? Because I assume that if Siri can't really understand your African name, then that's sort of a bias in the NLP system with Siri, or general system there. Are there steps being taken to solve the challenge of biases in textual data and, making this technology, this NLP technology, in quotes, responsible for Africans?
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful question. I think that there are a lot of initiatives that are going on, because, talking of biasness in text data, biasness definitely in the field of natural language processing, it also biasness in machine learning in general. So basically, there are a lot of initiatives like the African Master of Machine Intelligence. So this is the program that I'm part on, and I'm basically finishing soon. And this program has been funded by Google and Facebook. So they give money to support the young Africans to be able to get into the field of machine learning first. If for the moment you do a survey, for example, you send it to anyone who is talking machine learning, or anyone who's doing machine learning, asking him, where did you learn machine learning? I can assure you, you will get less than 1% of people that will tell you that they learn it through university. Because our traditional university are not teaching those subjects, even though those are things that are currently going on in the world. So this is a real hot subject in computer science currently, but you have Department of Computer Science in our countries that don't teach those things. So just saying that we have a wonderful program as the MMI that is both in Rwanda and in Ghana for the moment. And those are steps that have been made to, because I believe that the issue of biasness cannot just be solved by trying to unbiased data only. I believe that you need to add a representation of people that will be affected by those technology. So you need to avoid having biasness, like to avoid the technology to be biased toward African. You need to have African in your research team that will be able to test the technology, that will be able, for example, if you are doing a translation, for example, you're doing translation from English to Kosa or to Swahili. And if you don't speak Swahili, you just rely in Blue Score. Who told you that the Blue Score will make sense in Swahili? Because language are morphologically different. It's not the same. Maybe the Blue Score is higher, but someone speaking Swahili will say that this is nonsense. This translation doesn't actually making sense. Even if the Blue Score, the alignment of bigram and the trigram are making sense, but the one reading it, the one knowing the language can feel that there are biasness in the translation. So I think having African themselves in the field, working in natural language processing, involved in the collection of data, involved in building model is one step in reducing biasness in text data. So initiative like the African Master of Machine Intelligence are a great initiative. If you're interested in NLP and you're interested in machine learning in general, those are a good place to start to apply. And also initiative like the deep learning Indaba, which it happened every year. Unfortunately, because of the COVID this year, it will be virtual and we will not be able to meet, because usually we meet in a specific African country. Last year we were in Nairobi. I was delighted to be there physically to see researchers from all over the world meeting in Africa and discussing how can we solve African problem and how can we push the step of machine learning in the continent of Africa. So apart of that, last year I will add also Masakane that are working, because basically in the state of Masakane currently we are working both in machine translation and name entity recognition, and there is also a new initiative that is coming up. This is the speech recognition part, where we're trying also to do some work on recognizing African languages, that also to address the issue that I previously spoke of, for example, Siri not recognizing African languages. If we can build speech recognition systems that are made by African and evaluated by African, this will really change the story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just wonderful knowing that there are lots of steps being taken to make sure that underrepresented history in Africa is being kind of taken care of, sort of, when it comes to natural language processing technology. And we're going to be linking AMMI and the links to deep learning in the bar, of course, perhaps the largest deep learning conference in Africa. We're going to be linking those in the description so listeners can have a look at those right after the show. All right, Salomon, are there any specific applications that you think natural language processing would be very optimal for, that businesses or institutions solving problems in Africa should focus on for African problems? Do you think there are some very, very key applications that these problem solvers should take advantage of when it comes to using natural language processing to solve African problems?
Wow. Thank you for that wonderful question again. So, I will be a little bit biased here because, in my answer, so should take it in court. But at my own viewpoint, I think that machine translation specifically is a good opportunity for business and institutions to focus on, because, Africa is well known for, how rich we have our minerals, our underground and stuff like that. So we need people that come to trade with us, people that come to discuss with us, to be able to communicate. In the past, it has been like we need some translators that should be there to communicate, because those people, maybe it was, the kings or people that are in power are not able to understand, French, English, or Chinese, stuff like that. But if we work on improving the machine translation space, it will allow fair business. So people, the leader himself will be communicating with people, because when you add the middleman, you add also a risk, of biasness due to the third party that is included. So if there is direct contact and relying on technology that's supposed to be unbiased in that sense, and that will help the business to be fair, and and it will help also people that coming to do business to have a proper communication with people that are selling the product, because I believe that if there is no proper communication, there will be issues that will rise up later. So as I said earlier, I will be a little bit biased because I'm passionate about machine translation, and I think that machine translation is a good opportunity for businesses and institutions to focus on.
Definitely machine translation. Such a fascinating application in that sense, and can help solve a lot of problems if we take a look at it. But generally speaking, how would you advise these businesses and institutions solving problems in Africa, of course, to leverage progress in NLP? Because if you look at the global progress right now, talking about progress in unsupervised and self-supervised types of machine learning, language-based models, or, when you talk about transformer-based models like BERT, Google BERT, and even more recently, in fact, you talk about GPT-3, which is making the entire wave now, all these language-based models, and you look at the applications whereby you go on Twitter and you're seeing applications where people are using GPT-3 to file their taxes, to design, to make mockups, HTML mockups, or make design mockups pretty much. And people are kind of panicking and saying, is my job under threat or not, or things like that, and we're kind of looking back home here in Africa and saying, so is GPT-3 going to be useful for businesses and institutions solving problems? Or how can these businesses really help use these progress in language-based models to help solve problems in Africa, or generally looking at the broader scheme of things? How can we look at this progress and say, okay, fine, is it the right time to use this particular technology to solve problems, or we should wait for researchers to do more exploration and get to a more advanced state-of-the-art stable technology before we begin to take advantage of it?
Yeah. So thank you for the question again. Specifically in the African context, as we were discussing earlier, we are in the field of natural language processing. We are in a very early stage. We are now trying to build basically baseline for machine translation, trying to build in a lot of African language, they are not even embeddings. They are not even pre-trained embedding that are available, basically. They are not existing. So there are people that are basically trying to create those things. So today, people are talking of, GPT-3, GPT-2 before that, and all those big language models. And you realize, just look at the number of parameters that those models was being trained on. It's huge, and basically,
I think I read GPT-3 was about 175 billion parameters, if I'm not mistaken, and took a lot of money to train.
Yeah. So in those number of parameters, you can't even load it in your computer. So you can't even just load the model. So what about training it? So I think that those things are exciting, and it's good to see that happening for higher resource languages. And basically, even for the higher resource language, we are still studying to try to see if we can, use them practically in the decision-making stage. So in the context of Africa, this should be a motivation for us to make sure that we are building the good foundation for the field, like trying to make sure that for the amount of data that we have, what can we do with basic model? Because when we look at the accuracy of those models, the number of parameters, this leads to a simple conclusion that those models need a lot of data to be trained on. A lot of data. And because we don't have data, we can't just take that. It's like you are taking a bazooka to shoot a mosquito. It doesn't work like that.
Perfect illustration.
You are wasting resources. So you should find first a way to deal with small models to make it work perfectly, and the achievement and the improvement, what is going in the field should be like a motivation for you to be able to push further and to push the progress to reach that level where we have enough data to make also those transformers and as well as GPT-3 work in Swahili or in Lingala or in Kikongo or in any other African language outside there.
Oh, wow. It's thank you so much for such very, very clear message to listeners here looking to apply GPT-3 for African problems. We are not there yet. We have to solve the challenge of low resource data we have for the numerous languages we have on the continent before looking at applying very advanced and transformer-based models or technologies to solve our problems. So thank you so much once again, Salomon, for such amazing insights. Now, moving back to the African data scientist here, I'm sure most of our listeners will probably be looking at, how should I, get started learning NLP and, what are best resources or tips or things like that. Now, I'm kind of tempted to help them understand based on your perspective. What are the pitfalls for these African data scientists who are just getting started learning NLP? Or probably they are applying NLP technology to solve societal problems before. What are the pitfalls for them to avoid, whether learning or applying the technology to solve problems?
Wow. It's a wonderful question, and thank you for the question again. Mm-hmm. This question is highly linked with the previous one because I think that one of the pitfalls for someone who's trying to learn NLP now is GPT-3. Or these transformers.
Yeah.
You can just jump on it. You can just go and throw your data on a transformer just because it's the state of the art. So don't just focus on the state of the art. If there is one single message that someone who is trying to get into NLP right now, I can tell you, don't focus on the state of the art. Focus on the foundational papers. When you want, start with recurrent neural network. For example, study LSTM. How does it work? So study how historically people have been dealing with sequential data. So one of the advice that I would suggest to anyone who is trying to get started in NLP is start reading foundational papers. Don't just go to archive or any website to try to look at what are the papers that have been published in 2020 or 2019. Some of the paper that will help you is from 1997. It may be the paper that did the foundation of backprop. Read it. Understand the intuition. Because when you have the intuition, you may bring to us GPT-20 or GPT-21. Who knows? So the point here is not just jumping to big technology or using those big language models, but the point here when you are getting started or when you want to use those things in your career as a data scientist is to understand the genesis, the origin of those things. What are the backbone? What are the foundation that make those things work? How do people move from using a simple recurrent a background model, recurrent neural network, LSTM, GRU, attention, transformers, try to study all those things, get the intuition so that even because today transformers can become irrelevant. Who knows? The field is moving much more quickly. All those language models can change absolutely. But if you don't have a foundation, you get lost because you come into the field in the middle, not knowing what happened in the past, just trying to enjoy what is going on now. This will be a very unfortunate situation. Make sure that you know the history. Make sure that you get the foundation for you to be able to adjust yourself if there is any change.
I completely agree with you, Salomon. Talking about understanding the foundational, getting the basics right before moving to state of the art, because I think that's where lots of learners get it wrong. They start with applying the advanced transformer-based models, GPT-3, GPT-2 to and it really excites them because these are technologies that they really solve problems. For under the hood, it's really not related to what they can do for Africa. Like you said, we have to make sure that we tackle from the foundations, understand what's going on in the foundations. Then I really hope that GPT-10 can perhaps come out from Africa and using way less parameters than what GPT-3 is right now, because it will be fascinating to see that we can use we can have a workable GPT 4, 5, 10 model for African data uses way less parameters that you can easily run on a computer. That will be fascinating to see.
I believe in that as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Salomon, once again. And I think this question, although linked to some of the previous points you made, but I really think that it deserves a place of its own. How do you think global improvements in NLP, of course, we've talked about GPT-3 like a lot right now, and global improvements in NLP technology in the coming years would affect how we apply this NLP technology to solve African problems?
This is a difficult one as well. And so I will try to answer it as much as I can.
Okay.
So first things, a point that I want to make here, there is no better than an African himself to solve African problem.
Yeah.
So I believe that there is a lot of improvement in NLP technology that is there already, that is coming, will be continuing coming every day. Every single day, there are papers that are published that push the boundary of knowledge in the field of natural language processing. But to have those technology able to help solve African problem, we need to have African people represented in big labs that are constructing those technology.
Yeah.
We need to have African researchers on the continent studying those technology and trying to see the problem that we have, because you can't take someone from the US who has been living all his life in the US to solve a problem in Africa if he has never been affected by that problem, for example.
Yeah.
So if an African has been affected by a particular problem, is a farmer, for example, he has an issue on how to deal with his clients, he has a lot of clients, he wants to do the chatbot or something like that. There are some kind of cultural issues that can arise. How do you respond to people? How do you, communicate with local people? All those things are not that something that you can learn in an online course somewhere or from Harvard or Stanford. No, those are things that are really, it has to do a lot with, the African culture. And there is no one who is in the better position than the African himself, who understand the challenge that is going through, who understand how that problem is affecting him, to be able to apply those technology and use them to solve African problems. So if I can iterate that again, is saying that for us to be able to apply those technology, they are great technology. They are, if you just see what GPT-3, for example, I was amazed to see that GPT-3 can write JavaScript code for you. Can you imagine that? You just tell it, you tell it, for example, that I want a model to classify a cat and a dog. It will stack, models, do TensorFlow, import this, and write a model that do what you just write in the box to produce. You can see that they are doing a lot of great stuff, but to make all those great stuff relevant to solving African problems, we need to have African people in the loop. People that knows our problem, people that knows the technology, that knows how we can now make a bridge between the power of the technology and solving the problem that we are facing.
No, I completely agree with you, Salomon. And just a case in point here, just before our conversation, I was watching an interview that Howard Schwartz had. Schwartz is a founder of Starbucks, and he was talking about how they failed years in China, how the business failed for years in China until they realized that they didn't really know the business in China. It was a Chinese person who would actually know the culture, the tradition, and the business in China for them to properly scale. So they wasted right about 5 or so years, conducting business poorly in China until they switched the CEO to a Chinese person who actually knew the culture and knew that, you would have great people in China coming to work for you if you respect the elderly people, if you understand their culture and all of those things. And it really, really applies to what we're talking about here, that you can have somebody in the US really solving African problems while you have Africans really staying there and you don't really bring them in. Diversity is really key to really helping, and this time I'm really iterating for listeners who might not be Africans, that wherever you have a lab that's away from Africa and you're trying to solve problems for a global audience, diversity is really key. And it's only Africans that can really understand the problems that are plaguing Africa. Wonderful insights. Thank you so much once again, Salomon.
Just adding something there. There is one of your interview with, I think that was with Professor Julia.
Me, yes.
I think if I'm not wrong. You asked her a question related to something that was something to do with the state of machine learning or something in African continent.
Types of biases, yes.
I like her answer. She said that, okay, I'm in the US, I've been working but I can't say more about what is going on in the African context.
Yes.
So we need people to acknowledge that, okay, I'm a great researcher, I'm good, but there are things that has to do with reality in a specific location that my knowledge only will not be enough to solve the problem. That was a wonderful answer for Professor Julia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much once again. We'll link to that podcast and the show notes for listeners to get a listen. Salomon, I think we're coming to the end of this wonderful conversation, and it will be a taboo for me not to ask you this. Do you have specific resources you'd love to share to our listeners where they can learn more about NLP, and especially in the context of Africa?
Oh, great. So basically that's actually one very important question for specifically, as we say that we want a lot of representation in Africa. We are not hoping tree to start working or, stone to start doing NLP. We want real people, African, someone who's listening to this podcast, someone who's watching this, I don't know, from whatever you are. We need you to come into the field. So you may not have a mathematical background. Maybe you just did medicine. Or we have a lot of researchers, actually. I realize that they don't even have a master's degree or undergrad degree in mathematics or in engineering. They are passionate about how they can use natural language processing to solve their own problem. And those people are actually doing amazing research and coming up with results that we are using today. So I will advise anyone who's interested, a good start is there is this book from a professor, I think he's from Stanford. This is Professor Dan Juravsky. The book is, the title is Speech and Language Processing. I think this is the best one. I think the third, it's free online. If you just type on Google Speech and Language Processing, the third edition is currently being written. So the draft is available online. And you can start from there. When you read the introduction, they just give some kind of introduction to natural language processing. They discuss all the foundation of recurrent neural network, everything up to the modern, things that are going on. As I said, the book is currently being written. It means that there are some chapters that are not, completely filled because they are still improving the book. But there are previous edition, like the second edition, that is full by, I think that one is not free. It's on Amazon or something. And I will advise you as a first resource to look at it. And specifically in machine translation or in natural language processing, I will advise you to join Masakane. We are always happy to welcome new Masakane. So we have people that didn't know anything about machine learning, but when they come to Masakane, we have weekly meeting. We meet every week. So in doing that week, you get people that have a lot of experience in machine learning that kind of help you to get started to create your first baseline. We have every single week people submitting new benchmarks. So we will be delighted to have you. Just type on Google Masakane. I think we may, as Stephen said, we had the link to Masakane. Just click there, contact us, send an email, join our Slack channel. We'll be able to assist you in how to get started. How can you also work on your specific language? Imagine, I don't know which language you are speaking now, having build yourself with your hand, your own hand, with your own computer, building your model that will do translation from French, from English, from Chinese to your own mother tongues. That would be amazing. So those are the first resources, the book. The second one, join Masakane, and we will continue the discussion from there.
All right. Thank you so much, Salomon, for that. We're going to be linking to the description, the link to join Masakane, and the link to the draft you talked about, the book as well, so that our listeners can, have a look after listening to the show. Once again, Salomon, I can't really state enough how much I've learned from this particular episode. It's been so insightful and enlightening. Do you have any departing thoughts for our listeners? Maybe a golden advice or, something close?
Oh, thank you very much, Stephen, for having me. It was really a privilege to be on stage with you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the work that you are doing. When I got your email, I had an opportunity to just try to see some of your work in the past and what you have been doing. And I think that we need more people like you. Your work is amazing and inspiring us to go again further and push the boundary of knowledge in Africa and solve our own problem. Thank you for that. To answer your question, okay, so if there's one last thing that I would like to share with our listener, every day when I wake up, personally, I always, before I go into the lab to start working, I usually ask, because I like using Siri, I always ask Siri, can you tell me what is on my calendar for today? So it's just starting telling me that I have this meeting, I have this, just to remind me. So I'm kind of a fan of the same thing with Alexa for people that like Amazon product or Google Talk. So those technology are available. People in Africa, we are buying those latest iPhone, latest Android. But one of the things that always feel it's making me sad to know that there is some people in my country that, or in other country in Africa, that have those powerful tools, those powerful phones, but they can't benefit those technology. For example, before I sleep, sometime I'm tired. I'm just saying, Siri, please schedule an alarm for me at 6:30 because I have a meeting with Stephen or something like that. So I don't have to go to my iPad. I'm tired. I just sleep. I know for sure that it will do that action. But those power are limited if you don't speak language like English or French or some other languages. So I'm thinking of someone who have money to buy those phones, is paying the same amount with someone who also speak English, but I can give an illustration. I like giving an illustration. Basically, you are like someone using an airplane to drive in a road with other car and get stuck on traffic. But you don't know that airplane can fly. So basically, let's put our hand together. Let's associate ourselves, put our strength together to be able to have those technologies support our language or build our own technology that will be able to provide data that those companies can use to incorporate it in the system so that it will be responsive for our language and we can benefit from the technology. One last thought that I would like to add. Recently, I was working on a speech project where I was supposed to read things in my mother tongue. I thought that I still know my mother tongues until I was about to read a full paragraph in my mother tongue. I realized that I'm kind of starting forgetting my own mother tongues. We are losing our origins. We are losing, what makes the origin of a people is its language, is the way we were communicating. Today, we have people that are from Nigeria, but that they can't speak their own mother tongues. They just speak English. No, you should be able to know your origin, to know. And if we are not working in bringing our language in the digital form, I'm sorry, those languages may disappear because the world is going digital. Let's wake up. And because of our continent, put our hands together and make this happen.
Well, so Salomon, it's been a wonderful conversation with you once again. How can listeners contact you and learn more about your work?
Oh, great. I think my Twitter account, you can find me on Twitter. My DM is open. So it's just Salomon Kabongo 1. I have tweeted Salomon Kabongo 1 if you type on Twitter. And basically, if you Google my name, Salomon Kabongo, you will see my website as well, my LinkedIn. I will be free. If you contact me on LinkedIn or on email. And I will also share with you my personal email that if someone wants to send me an email, you can write to that email. Okay. Those links, your website, Twitter, LinkedIn, profiles will be in the show notes as well as your email. Thank you so much once again. Thank you so much, listeners, for listening to the show today. Every link we mentioned will be in the show notes, so you could check the show notes after listening to this. Thank you. Salomon, once again, Salomon, of course, you can still contact Salomon via the links mentioned in the show notes. And before, I think we have nothing else. So till next time, please stay safe, listeners. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.